The first technique we're going to go over is how to make a fake cut with just paint. So again, we're going to use our alcohol activated makeup and we're going to use a brush for this one. I prefer a brush that is flat, that has a little bit of an edge to it so you can get a bit more precision with where you're going. And we're going to be working with our 99% alcohol, working on top of our palette to mix our colors. So you want to start with a little bit of a blood tone. So for this, I'm going to use an aged blood, which is, again, remember, an aged blood is darker, it has more brown tone than a flesh blood will. Deciding where you want it to go, I'm going to imagine that he has a cut around here. So, taking your straight edge, you can just draw straight down. Again, layering and building up is what we're working on here. You can also, if you find it easier to keep your alcohol on top of your palette, if you're confident that you can work and not spill it, you can do that as well. Now because this is a cut, and this will be, cut-wise, we're going to say that this is a fairly fresh cut, actually. We have our general idea of where we want the cut to go. Now, to clean your brush off, you can just take a little bit of the alcohol and you can wipe it clean on a paper towel. You can also use multiple brushes for this, but I really prefer to use the one flat one, so I'll go and clean in between each step. Now from there, we're going to take a little bit of white. Now this white is going to go very sparingly. And we're almost going to outline exactly what we just did on both sides. This will give dimension to the area. So again, we don't ever want to just paint something flat, one texture, and then leave it that way. We want to give the illusion of things being lighter and darker to pop out and look 3D, even though it is 2D that we're painting here. So for this, you can go about as close to the cut line as possible. You can also use your finger to help blend in between. And again, remember, not every area is going to be as consistent as the next. We want to keep the inconsistency there. So not always one flat color and then one flat color. It's a little more opaque here and a little more translucent here to give dimension of where it is. So I'm imagining that this middle part from about here to here is thicker and a deeper cut than this end part and this end part. That's a fairly good rule of thumb. If you're being sliced or stabbed, think of the outside. The center is always going to be a little bit deeper and have a little bit more of a wound than the outside edges will. So knowing that, we're making sure to give a little bit extra highlight to these inner areas. That way it looks a bit more 3D and we do a little bit less to the outside. After we've added a bit of white in there, we're going to add a little bit of black for dimension. Now white and black paired next to each other, again, are going to make the idea of something being 3D, and they're going to give it the dimension that we're looking for. So black is going to go sparingly here. As always with the blacks that we're using here, you go very tiny. And this is going to go inside on top of the red, but right next to the white line that you've placed. And we're not going to do this all over the entire area. We're only doing it on the center area where we want more depth. You can see how it already looks in the center, that it's a bit deeper and has a little bit more trauma than the rest of the area. Going back in with my blood tone. I'm going to go in a little bit more of a fresh blood now and tap it right on top of what we just did. Again, inconsistent. So some areas have a little bit more color than others. I'm also using a bit of a stamping technique. And you'll notice too, it's not perfectly straight. It's a little bit wonky. It shouldn't look like it's completely straight down because it rarely happens that the skin will cut at a completely straight angle. You can see by building up and layering, going between darker and lighter and brighter, we start to create dimension. We start to see the cut take form here. Now from here, from afar, you get the illusion of a cut. If we want to go a little bit more in depth in this, which I do want to, I'm going to go back in with one of our sponges. This is where having them pre-ripped off is going to come in handy to save you time. And what I'm going to take is more of a neutral flesh tone palette, but in a bit of a irritation color. Because again, it's not flat. The trauma isn't just in the cut itself, it's the surrounding area that it affects. So with my ripped up edge, I'm just going to lightly tap kind of a coral irritation color around the area of the cut here. Working in small layers, building up how it looks. And this is similar technique to when we were doing the bruise, where you're just lightly tapping around. Of course, as we know, we're looking for the center to look like it has a bit more trauma to it, so we'll focus a little bit more of this tone in the center area. And then also adding in a little bit of a yellow. Not too bright of a yellow, more of a pastel yellow kind of rice paper color. Lightly on the outside as well, so that we get a little bit more of that swollen look. It should softly diminish into the rest of the skin while maintaining a general idea of the shape and the placement of where it all happened. So from here, to make it look very realistic, we're going to add a bit of fresh blood. Because we are assuming that this just happened, taking a bit of our fresh blood with a tiny controlled brush, we're going to start at the top and let it naturally flow down with the cut. When you're working with blood, again, go thin and go very sparingly with how you're doing it, and then you can build from there. Pay attention too to things like the direction that the blood will be flowing. So imagine that he was standing upright like this and someone cut him that direction. Gravity naturally will pull the blood down with the direction it is. However, if he was laying flat on the ground and someone cut him like that, the blood would flow completely differently based on where gravity is. So that will help you in creating a realistic look, is knowing what position the person is in when they are injured to help you plan where the blood flow will go. And then position your actor in that same direction so you can get the natural flow as well. Now, of course, the blood's not just going to stay consistent in that area. It's great to see that that is a cut, and visually we see that it looks like he has a cut here. If we wanted it to be a bit more 3D, we could go more aggressive with the white and with the black on the insides as well to pop it out a little bit more. However, to give a little bit more realism to it, we're going to take a bit of a heavier application of the blood, and we're just going to put it in the darker area and kind of let gravity do its thing. You can kind of help follow it and force it along a bit, but having a sort of a dollop of blood on the brush and letting it flow down will give a bit more realism to it versus just letting it be one strand of blood as well. Another thing that I like to do as well is take my finger and just lightly tap around. Again, it kind of creates that bit of an imperfect edge to where it looks like it got a little bit messy. And it's not just a perfectly flat image. Now think of too, if this is bleeding down a bit, it maybe isn't bleeding so much that it's going to drip all the way down, but it's certainly bleeding enough to continue down beyond where you just did the cut shape. So continuing the look down with the blood is going to add to the effect and add to the realism. Maybe he bumped it over here and it got a little bit messy. Things that just would make sense for an injury. Now, this blood specific will dry. That's part of why it is used very frequently, because once this sets and it dries, it stays in place, so you have a consistent look to it, which aids in continuity for film work and anything else that you may do that requires continuity. Once it dries, however, it's not going to look like fresh blood anymore. It'll look like a matte finish and it'll just look like paint. So while it's there, you don't want to add any more blood to it, because then it changes how it looks and you risk ruining your continuity. But what you will do is take KY jelly. KY jelly you find any drugstore. Take a little bit of that jelly and just place it right on top. That'll give the illusion of the blood being more wet and looking like it's fresh without having to actually add more blood in and maintaining your continuity.